When Brian Clough died at the age of 69 in the autumn of 2004, the world of football lost one of its greatest ever managers. His contribution to the game was most aptly summed up in his own words when, asked about his success, he replied, "I wouldn't say I was the best manager in the business, but I was in the top one." Football paid its respects to Cloughy at a memorial service staged at Pride Park Stadium, home of Derby County Football Club. The great and the good were there, together with former players who had enjoyed League Championship and European Cup success under the great man. But also attending the service were thousands of ordinary people whose lives were in some way touched by Brian Clough. He was especially loved in Derby, the city he had called home for more than half his life. The desire to attend the memorial service was the reason it was switched at the family's request to Pride Park Stadium from Derby Cathedral. In the week of his death, Derby County and Nottingham Forest had staged their own individual matchday tributes at Pride Park Stadium and the City Ground to their greatest ever manager. Now, for one October evening, the fierce rivalry of the two East Midlands clubs was put on one side, as fans wearing the black and white of Derby and the red of Forest sat side by side at Pride Park. Only one man was capable of making Rams and Reds unite, and that was Brian Clough. This is the story of a football legend's impact on the people of Derby and its football club in particular, a club he charmed, cajoled and captivated as he transformed the Rams from second division oblivion to league champions in 6 short years. In his early days in Middlesbrough, the 6th of 8 children, there was no hint of the legendary status Brian Clough was to achieve. He failed the 11+ exam and left school at 15 for a job as a local clerk. A year later he signed for Middlesbrough Football Club, making his mark as a goal-scoring centre-forward, with 204 goals in 222 appearances. Middlesbrough was also where he met his future wife, Barbara.
I used to walk through Albert Park, and there was the Ria's Cafe at the corner of Ayrsham Street, where we used to go for a milkshake after training, or an ice cream, or whatever we could afford. But mainly we just used to sit there, because we had nought. And I met Barbara in Ria's Cafe, and it was the best thing I ever did in my life.
Brian won 2 England caps in 1959, but even in those early days, his confident attitude did little to endear him to the Football Association. He later admitted that on occasions he had been big-headed, because most people were when they were in the limelight, but added, "I call myself big-head just to remind myself not to be." He moved to Sunderland, netting 63 goals in 74 appearances for the Black Cats. Indeed, his 251 goals in 274 outings for Middlesbrough and Sunderland was a post-war record. But his playing days effectively were ended on Boxing Day 1962, with a serious knee injury playing for Sunderland against Bury.
I'd got my head down going into the penalty area, chasing a bad ball from Jimmy McNabb. And a goalkeeper came out rather balmy in those days, because they didn't come out quickly in those days, and they weren't as brave as present-day goalkeepers. Anyway, I went over him and I did my knee and I did my big head and all that type of thing, and I finished up in the infirmary in Sunderland, and that finished me altogether.
Initially a youth team coach at Sunderland, in 1965 Brian became the youngest manager in the Football League at the age of 29 when he joined 4th Division Hartlepool United, teaming up with Peter Taylor, a former playing colleague at Middlesbrough. After 2 successful years, Derby County came knocking on their door.
My mind's set on football. I know how I approach it, etc., etc. Make no difference whether it's Derby County or whether it's Liverpool.
I came 18 months ago from Burton Albion to be with Brian Clough. Brian Clough, the man I know, and I intend to stay with Brian Clough. He's fulfilled all I thought of him when I came from Burton, and I intend to go with Brian Clough to the top of the tree, and that we'll start at Derby.
I had 3 small children when I first came. I dumped my 3 children and Barbara into Normanton Park to get the contract rubber stamped at the baseball ground, and they were on the swings. I set them off on the swings, so that's special. I lived in a lovely place called Allistry. I then moved on to Quarndon, and everywhere I went I was happy, and people were happy to see me. So that was the pull. My children describe themselves as Midlanders now, and when I get on my high horse about Yorkshire, they say, "Well, you weren't born in Yorkshire." Two were born in Sunderland, actually. My daughter was born in Hartlepool, but they still associate themselves with Derby. And of course, all the schooling days they went through Derby, and we're just there. We're a unit, part and parcel. We were helped when we got here, some very kind people, and we're cemented here now, and I'm afraid you've got me for a little bit longer.
Gordon Guthrie, still working for Derby County in 2004, was a physio with the Rams back in the 60s and remembers Clough's first day at the baseball ground.
Well, like every boss, he said he wanted the team in the dressing room to speak to, and they was all assembled, and of course he said, I'll be down in 5 minutes, which meant a lot longer, which we didn't know about, but of course he came down eventually. He used to wear these Blakeys in the heels of his shoes, and at that time the passage was concreted, and of course when you heard him coming down it was like a sergeant major, because he used to walk quite quick, not so quick later on in years, but he did then, and of course the doors flew open and he's come in. Of course all the lads are sitting round in the baseball first team dressing room, and of course he just looks around. Well, at the end where the goalkeeper always changed near the bathroom was Reg Matthews, who was a terrific goalkeeper, as you know, an international and really a remarkable goalie. And of course he looks around and then his eyes rest on Reg, don't they? So he says, well, as I'm looking at you all, I think I've only got one international player and a real player at the moment, he says, and it's Reg Matthews. He says, and I know Reg likes a fag, so at any time he wishes to have a smoke at half time or anything, he can have one, but the rest of you have got to prove to me how good you are, or if you're good enough. And that was it.
Clough and Taylor's first season in charge at the baseball ground, the 1967-68 campaign, was unspectacular on the field of play, but the pair's signings reinvigorated Rams fans. The first three were John O'Hare, Roy McFarland and Alan Hinton.
So everybody's winding everybody up, and the locker room was full of fun and high spirits. Right, yeah. So I go I'll go in the next room into the bathroom, the toilet, and I'm in there, and then all of a sudden somebody shouts, Mr. Clough wants to see you. It might have been you. And I go, if Mr. Clough wants to see me, tell him to come and see me in here. Aye. And Cloughie was actually there. And he goes, hey, young man, when I finish with you, you'll want to go back in that damn toilet, So that's how it all started. Yeah. And it was only fun. I mean, to be fair, I went to see him about the fine, and he said, well, and in those days you had to sign a piece of paper.
That's right,
yeah. Agree with it, and I won't sign it. And we worked it out. But I mean, he played a lot of games, mind games. He was miles ahead of everybody.
I had no aspirations in the sense of leaving Tranmere. It was on my doorstep. I'm a Liverpool guy, a Liverpool boy. The team that I wanted to play for was Liverpool, Shankly's team. That was the team I followed as a kid. I was in the Cop, like a lot of other Liverpool supporters, and that was the team I always wanted to play for. I was told afterwards that Shanks had come in and was disappointed the fact I'd been sold, but that never happened. And the one thing about, like I say, about life, never look back, because I had a great time here.
Somebody once accused me of producing sides that were frightened all the time. And Cloughie gets away with it because they're frightened of him. What a load of bull. What a load of bull. In life, you cannot, irrespective of what job you do and what career you're pursuing, do it to the best of your ability if you're frightened. Now, if you think about it, if I was sending a side out at 5 to 3 on a Saturday, like that, frightened, arms tensed, nerves jangling, what kind of preparation was that? That was absolutely rubbish. When we went out with a side with one thing in the mind. Well, two actually. One was winning, and one was I used to have a save. To get 3 points, I'd shoot my grandmother. And I used to say that. And it was a good job she was dead. Because I would have shot her.
If you can't wait for next month's episode, you can buy the full programme on DVD at www.belper.tv shop.